Want to give money to the oligarchs but love lobbing Scorchers? Do we have a deal for you? MLS Season Pass is back on Apple TV with access to every single MLS match, including Leagues Cup and the entire Audi MLS Cup playoffs with no blackouts. It's not just the games, you get total access to the pre- and post-match MLS 360 whip-around show in both English and Spanish, and get live look-ins and highlights from around the league, as well as full match replays and recaps. Now, you can support our show by visiting lobbingscorchers.com/Apple TV to purchase your subscription and support our show.
lobbingscorchers.com/Apple TV. Please, don't let the oligarchs win.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. I'm Ari, that's Niko, and we've got another great show to start off the week here. We're going to be talking some Seattle Sounders and Major League Soccer, as always, and we're going to be doing some national punditry with my friend Joe Lowery of Backheeled and Total Soccer Show. Backheeled, a Sounder at Heart partner, by the way. So we'll be joined by Joe in just a few minutes here. But before we get into the national punditry, Niko, we're going to talk some Seattle Sounders this morning, and the vibes are not good. How are you feeling?
Hey, well, first of all, welcome to everybody that's hopping on. Good morning. I am on my fourth cup of coffee because I pulled an all-nighter, which typically means that, we're probably going to have some good stories and Sounder at heart. So we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the day. But man, yeah, the vibes are not great. They haven't been great. It is interesting that this team has almost gone back to exactly the issues that happened in 2024.
Yeah.
And,
so
that's just all bad. That's just all bad. Everybody who has insecurities, everybody who was upset last year, they're all having this, PTSD of last season. So, yeah, tough outlook for the Sounders.
Let's start right there, because I think that's exactly right. People are having PTSD to last year, and they're right. After the Charlotte game, people were going with the talking point of like same old thing as last year, and I was quick to say no, I don't think that was the same as last year at all. The result ended up like a home draw. Yes, it ended up the same, but I didn't think the performance was similar to last year at all. You fast forward to this week, post all the injuries, and with that performance against the Houston Dynamo, 0-0 draw at home, and Niko, that was like a carbon copy of last year. So I am definitely not going to sit here this morning and tell anyone who's feeling that way that they are incorrect about that. That scoreless draw against the Houston Dynamo, if you put that in the 2024 season, it would have it's almost eerie how much of a carbon copy that is. A scoreless draw at home against a not that good team, where the XG seemed like it was cooking. There was some decent chances, but they couldn't finish them. And that is not good, to say the least. Injuries notwithstanding, I think it is a reasonable ask and expectation to be able to score one goal at home against the Houston Dynamo, and they couldn't do that. So yeah, I mean, anyone who's saying that it felt like last year is correct. And I'll even say that the people who were getting on Albert Rusnak, everyone knows that we've been defenders on this show, but like he's been taking some criticism in the aftermath of this game, and it's merited. Even with the injuries, you still had him out there. You still had Jesus Ferreira, your biggest offseason trade arrival, out there. Like I said, getting one goal, which would have won you the game, is a reasonable expectation, and they couldn't do it. And I think, Niko, they're playing with fire with a performance like that. I think we're gonna have to see what happens with this set of games going forward, and if they can prove that wrong and start scoring goals and taking some results, I'm willing to accept that it might not look incredible offensively with the injury situation right now, but it's got to look better than that. Otherwise, people are going to be saying same old Seattle Sounders, and they're going to be right.
Yeah, this is the issue for me. Clearly, a team that has enough depth and was supposed to have enough depth to do a lot of things this season. That was the hill that this team was going to die on. This is what we brought in together, was to play every tournament, win every single game, be able to handle injuries. And when this Sounders team at home against the depleted Houston Dynamo, depleted. I mean, Finn has got, I think, 5. One of the center backs for Houston has 5 professional starts at center back. Burlow gets hurt. They have to put Escobar at center back. They put Steris as left back. There's all kinds of movement of a team that just is depleted, man. They're down to their 3rd goalkeeper at some point in this game because Maurer gets hurt, and you're still unable to get a goal. It's just frustrating, right? The possession was fine. The build-out was fine. I thought that they used the width of the field in many times throughout that game positively. But at the end of the day, this team needs to be able to score. And look, Jesus Ferreira, he is going to continue to get criticism because he was your big acquisition of the offseason. So is it fair because he hasn't been able to play that position consistently? Maybe not. But at the end of the day, I'm not looking for anything beyond at least your potential, your talent. I mean, the things that happened with Ferreira in this game almost felt like a lack of confidence, just to take a touch, just to make a pass, just to be able to get to certain spaces. Brian said he wanted to be more active. I totally agree. He needed to be more involved. He needed to be more engaged, and there were times where he wasn't. So many issues with this team, with their prime age, the key components, the X factors. Albert, he was okay, but he needs to be able to do more than that. He gets 2-3 opportunities on top of the box where he's got to be able to put it away. He's got to be able to do a little bit more with it. And I hate to criticize him because he was actually one of the players that I thought influenced the game at least consistently enough. I thought that his set pieces were good. I thought that he set up a couple of really good balls. There's a late run to the far post by Alex Roldan where Rostek finds him across the 18, and unfortunately Alex doesn't put it away. So I actually thought he didn't play awful, but again, the magnifying glass that we talked about on Albert Rostek was going to be there, and therefore it's something that he's going to have to live with. And if that expectation is beyond what he's providing you, then he needs to be criticized for it. So it's just all kinds of issues when it comes to the offensive efficiency, the final product. And look, 4 shots on goal necessarily, 4 real opportunities is what you got out of all the possession and all of the volume that you had. And that's not necessarily good. That's not what we want to see out of this team. And if we want to talk about defensively, they get a shutout. That's even almost irrelevant because this Houston team came here to play on a deep block, hold on to the draw, and that's what you heard Ben Olsen after the game talk about. Look, man, I'm happy with the performance. We limited their chances. We came out of Lumen Field with a point, and it was glorious. So he was excited about it, man. He even told some guy, "Look, have you ever coached away in Seattle?" So some press member who had a question, and he's like, "Man, it's hard. It's difficult to play out here." So he was happy with it, and therefore Seattle wasn't really challenged. And even then, there were moments where Dynamo had a couple of big opportunities. Whether they didn't finish those, bad shots. There was one where Yammer Gomez Andrade just recuperates with some speed and cuts off Kowalski. And so even with the very limited Houston team, they could have got that win. So it's just so many things that went wrong in this one where it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, I thought the chance creation was okay in this game. Like Seattle had some good looks, but they've almost kind of like lost the benefit of the doubt with that, because like how often last season in that first couple months of the season where they were really struggling offensively did we say, oh, well, like they played pretty well, they just couldn't finish. And then it's like once you say that for the 27th time, it kind of it loses its meaning. All right, I'm going to get into a couple super chats here, and then we're going to bring in Joe Lowery. Derek Richards, thank you so much for starting it off with the $2 super sticker. You're the man. Appreciate you. We got one from Jax206. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, Niko, can you tell Craig that Kyogo Furuhashi is someone we should absolutely be looking at? Rene wants to sell him. Look at what he's done for Celtic. I don't know that much about that player, but I appreciate that Jax is actually dropping a name, because a lot of times people, talk about signings that need to be made, but they don't actually say who it should be. So I appreciate that. Niko, do you know, really quick before we bring in Joe, do you know anything about Furuhashi?
I do not, but I do know that the Sounders did have some scouting done in that part of the world. So if he happened to be, if he's someone who is good, because I'm not gonna lie to you and sit here and like I know the player, he's not one that's on my radar, if that means anything to you. But Craig and the scouting team were in that part of the world. So if he's any good, I'm sure that he is on their list.
Craig does not listen to our advice, by the way, unfortunately. Not that I tried to give him that much, but I don't think he would. All right, let's bring in our next guest. Really excited to bring on my friend, Joe Lowery. Let's bring him to the stage right now from Backheeled.
Hey.
Joe, last time I saw you was at MLS Cup, and we said we were going to line this up. Now we've finally done it. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning at this early hour. How are you doing?
Yeah. Fellas, great to be here, first of all. And I'm glad we followed through. It's scheduling can be tricky sometimes. We got there. We got to get our sea legs under us in the first stage of the MLS season. We got to wade in a little bit. And now we're here. It is great to be with you guys.
Yeah, see, like you're in a time zone that I can rock with. Tom Bogue, it's like when we record late at night or like even early evening, it's 11 p.m. for him out there. So that's why he never, if you're wondering why Tom Bogues never comes on Lobbing Scorchers, because he's on the East Coast.
Well, I've heard, rumor is, Ari, that Tom is just not committed to the grind. I don't think there's anything about his work rate or his volume of scoops that shows that he's committed to the grind. I think it's just a facade, frankly.
A fake grinder is what I would call him. Joe, before we talk some Seattle Sounders and MLS with you, why don't could you just give our audience the quick nutshell on what you're doing with Backheeled, Sounder at Heart partner, Total Soccer Show, anything you want to shill about the work that you're doing for our audience here?
Yeah, I'll take the shill soapbox for just a second. Yeah, you can find almost all of my written work over at backheeled.com, in addition to some podcast work as well. We cover MLS and USL and the U.S. men's national team and other American soccer things from a national perspective. And I think we do it in a fun and different, unique way. We dig into the on-field action. We try to add real context to the stories that we tell as well. Lots of feature stuff that we're doing this year. Some really, really fun stuff. We did a great feature, a year or so ago on the Sullivan family before Kevin Sullivan blew up. And that has aged very, very well. We've got John Arnold coming in and telling features for us. And there's just a lot of stuff that we're doing that I think is a lot of fun. So folks, if you're a Sounders fan, you might already know about us via that partnership with Sounder at Heart. Otherwise, go check it out. We got MLS coverage of every team in the league every single week, in addition to some other fun columns as well. And then, you can hear me on TSS. Just finished recording our USMNT Canada post-mortem episode, which was exactly as fun as you think it was. And you can hear me on TSS 5 days a week as well. I love working with those guys.
Everybody go sub to the Backheeled, listen to TSS, support independent soccer media, all that good stuff. All right, Joe. Let's get into it. I wanted to hit some Seattle Sounders from a national perspective with you first. I won't lie to you. The vibes are not great out here right now, coming off another scoreless draw at home against a not very good team, which is something that happened a lot last year. We were kind of just talking about how that game was giving us flashbacks to the issues that afflicted this team at the start of last season. They ended up turning that season around pretty decently, to be fair, made a good run in the playoffs, but that was not a fun stretch of soccer. And I don't think anyone is excited about the idea or the prospect of watching a lot of grinded out scoreless draws and 1-0s again. That seems to be the situation that might be taking place with these injuries. But what do you think? How do you assess the Seattle Sounders right now from the outside? What are you seeing?
I mean, I see a team that probably isn't creating a lot of really fun vibes in a fan base like you're talking about there, Ari. I mean, this is a Sounders team that's having to grind more than they wanted to coming into this season, where you get through CCC play and that didn't turn out how Seattle wanted, obviously, but you pile extra games on your schedule and that's going to harm the regular season product because you're trying to allocate resources to Champions Cup, and that is completely understandable. I think everybody in Seattle's position would do the exact same thing there. Then the issue is, okay, now you're not only dealing with fixture congestion, you're also dealing with injuries. And Pedro de la Vega is injured yet again and basically cannot be counted on, I don't think, at this point. And Jordan Morris goes down with that injury. And Paul Arriola, you lose for the season. I think if all those guys are healthy, this is a really obvious thing to say. But this Sounders team is picking up points at a better clip than the 1 point per game pace they're on right now in the regular season through 5 games. I think basically the worst possible scenarios have happened for Seattle already. Now, the thing is, I still really believe in this team, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is defensively, they're still awesome. You go and look at, it's early days, but you go look at their non-penalty XG against numbers, and you go actually watch the tape and look at the goals allowed numbers as well. They're still really, really effective defensively, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. The attack is a work in progress, and Jesus Ferreira is a work in progress in this team, and he's not getting to combine with all of the players that he thought he would when he arrived in Seattle. So it's early, and injuries make getting a full read on this team really difficult. But even if injuries continue to be a problem, you look at the rest of the Western Conference, just not impressed by and large so far. And Seattle is basically a proven commodity. Yes, they've seen this story before. No, it's not fun. I do think, though, we kind of know how this story ends.
All right, I'm gonna toss a take out there for a little overreaction or correct reaction or underreaction, and I'll toss it to Niko, and then Joe, I want your take as well. Tell me if I'm overreacting. This isn't necessarily what I believe, but I think this is something that a lot of people are feeling right now, which, Joe, you hit on it with Pedro de la Vega, another muscle injury. And, I think it's all well and good to say that this team would be a lot better offensively if he was healthy and he was playing. That's what we were saying all of last year. And he looked like, I think the most frustrating thing about this is that he looked like the player that he was billed as, I think, for a lot of the time that he was playing this season. But the take I want your guys' take on is just that they can give this one more go. They can give this one more go, get him healthy, ramp him back up, and try and have him be a centerpiece of this attack going forward and hopefully the rest of the season and into the playoffs. If they ramp him back up, put him back out there, and he gets another muscle injury and it's just he gets in that cycle again, then the conclusion would be that I don't know if it's that they need to move off him, but that he cannot be taking up a designated player spot on the roster next year. Not to do with anything with him as a player, but just the reality that you can't count on him as a regular contributor because of these injury concerns. Niko, where are you at on that? And then Joe, you can come in.
Oh man, I think it's kind of early in the game to just try to get your chips back on that investment. By looking at him now, it seems like the severity of this specific muscle injury is not as bad as others. So to me, that is positive. We saw him this week, actually just a couple of days ago, before the Houston game, and he was already doing work with the ball. He was shooting, and that tells me that he is getting closer and closer. I would say that he would be available within a week or two. So if he gets another injury, I still would think that you want to hold on to that investment. I feel like he's a player that provides something that Seattle doesn't have in any other one of those attacking components, which is someone that's going to beat you off the dribble. He's going to, collapse defenses on him. And I think that he has enough of a track record that if he's able to come in, play well, you want to hold on to it. The DP designation, I don't give it too much of a emphasis for this specific team. I think Jordan Morris is one player that might come off that DP designation at some point, whether you buy him out or you do whatever you can do with the salary cap. So I will hold on to the DP designation for Pedro, and I'm confident that he will continue to be okay. And even if he gets another injury, I would not be ready to just hit the panic button and get him out of town just yet.
I'm more willing to hit the panic button on Pedro de la Vega when you look at his injury problems in Argentina and you look at how he's basically not been on the field. For Seattle, you toss in last year that it didn't seem like Brian Schmetzer knew how he wanted to use Pedro de la Vega, where it was very much we're going to get him on the field and we're going to sort of try a few things. And there was a lot of Pedro de la Vega playing centrally, which I don't think is the best fit for him. I think he's better when he has a chance to be a little bit wider. The whole Pedro de la Vega experience so far, from the players' performances on the field, the injuries, and the way he's been used, is just so bizarre to me. And the fact that Seattle paid $7 million plus to sign him in the first place from Lanús just always is very strange. And I think is building towards being a large miss in a transfer strategy that doesn't tend to feature a lot of misses. At the same time, you're really invested in Pedro de la Vega. And while, let's be honest, his best performance of the year came against Antigua, like there have been some flashes along the way, and I think he does have some quality. In MLS, it's hard to detach yourself from players because there are limited roster spots in that situation. We don't see a lot of owners want to cut bait on this much money ever, really. So I think you're very much committed to Pedro de la Vega. I shade towards where you are, Ari, of if not trying to get rid of him at this stage, because he can still be a useful MLS player, right? Even if he's not a DP, it is, I'm at the point where I'm not expecting anything from Pedro de la Vega, and whatever Seattle gets from him is a bonus. And credit to Seattle, right? I'm talking about this as being a transfer strategy that doesn't feature a lot of misses. They are one of the very few MLS teams in my mind. I know they've started slowly this year in regular season play. They're one of the only MLS teams in my mind that you could take away one of their DPs. You could take away their highest priced player, and they could still win MLS Cup, or they could still fight for basically any trophy outside of the Club World Cup that they're going to be in this year. This roster, if they can get Jordan Morris back and healthy, as soon as possible, maybe there's a replacement that comes in for Paul Arriola. Even without Paul Arriola and without Pedro de la Vega, I think this squad is still really good, and it's still better than last year. So things can be two things. The Sounders ceiling can be limited because Pedro de la Vega is not a player that you can rely on. I honestly believe that. And Seattle can still be a threat for almost every trophy this year because the roster is just that good.
And the Sounders have not been very good at buying players out or, taking those hits. Because, the reality is that Seattle doesn't have the wallet that other clubs around MLS do. So you are vested in, but I totally get what you're saying, Joe.
Yeah. So I understand the idea that this roster was supposed to be set up in a way where if De La Vega goes out, he was, like Joe was saying, he's supposed to be kind of a bonus, I think, from the way that they were looking at it. But we have a large sample at this point of when he is not on the field. There is a significant drop off. There's no one else on the roster that really brings the type of creativity that he does. Joe, you mentioned you've been questioning like his usage. I'm curious, like, what way have they used him that you think that they could do differently, or is there a way that they could deploy him that would make him more effective than he has been?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll push back on we have a large sample size of them looking better with PDLV on the field. He's played like 700 MLS minutes so far.
Large sample size of them looking not good at all offensively when he's not
when he's not on the field, and also when a lot of, I hear what you're saying. The attacking struggles are still a problem. I think Jesus Ferreira is more of the attempted solution for that, and I think there needs to be a little bit more time given to integrate him into this team. But I get what you're saying. The attack is still a question mark for this team. There's no doubt about that. As far as De La Vega's usage in general, last season there was a lot of him playing either as more of a 10 or when Seattle would shift their structure and possession to feature that flat line of 5. That's been a big theme this year as well for Brian Schmetzer. He would pop up in either half space, either the left half space or the right half space. When I watch Pedro de la Vega play, and it's been a similar usage this year when he's been on the field, he's mostly been in the half spaces. When I watch de la Vega play, I see a guy who is explosive, like you're talking about, Niko, a guy who is dangerous when he can drop the shoulder and play and tap the ball around someone, FIFA almost pace abusing style, right? and it's harder to do that in more congested areas. And I see de la Vega as being a player who could actually do some damage in a little bit more space with his boots closer to the chalk, where he can go and attack players 1v1, because he's got some Tasmanian devil vibes about him and how he plays. Like, it's a little bit out of control. And I don't know that you can harness that in a super effective way in the half spaces or underneath a striker. I think you need to afford him a little bit more space to go out and attack. And I was kind of wondering earlier on this year if Brian Schmetzer was thinking about that too, because one of the things I've seen from Seattle a lot in 2025 is the right back, instead of overlapping to be the widest player in possession, tucking into the half space, right? And giving the winger, and it's mostly been Georgie Manungu because he's been the one who's healthy in that role. Or at least it's been more of Manungu than it has been de la Vega. Yeah. It's been the winger getting the width than in the fullback getting the half space. And I think that suits de la Vega so much more than trying to force him into the half spaces. I think he can be somewhat effective in both roles. But again, we just have such a small sample size of what he actually looks like. And honestly, I don't know where Brian Schmetzer is going to use him or how any of this is going to go, because it feels really difficult to predict based off of what we've seen so far.
I do want to ask you about Ferreira real quick before we get into some more league-wide stuff. I would describe the vibe around him among the fan base at the moment as skeptical. He hasn't looked like he's fit in tactically that well yet, or chemistry wise, which I think that much is to be expected. But then you had the game in St. Louis where he was getting into it with players off the ball. He looked really frustrated. I think people were kind of raising their eyebrows at that. And then they go out in the Houston game. It still looks a little disjointed. I'm willing to give it time, because I think these things do take more time than people would like sometimes. And integrating a player like him, who's kind of a unique player, it might not hit incredibly well right away. But Joe, how do you kind of see how he's looked with the Sounders so far? And like, what do you think they need to do differently to get him going? Or is it just a matter of time?
Yeah, I think it is mostly a matter of time. I know that's not a super sexy take on all this, but I think we're aligned here, Ari, of the guy's played 90 minutes one time, through 5 games in the regular season. He just finally made it to 90 against Houston. He didn't really play. He still hasn't played a lot for this team. And Ferreira is a different type of 9 than most teams have. And he's a different type of striker than the Sounders have used before, right? He is, and folks who watch the U.S. men's national team know this, or folks that have tuned in a little bit with Dallas know this. He likes to drop in. He likes to combine. And that is a very different profile than someone who likes to keep the line or likes to push him behind the line, as Jordan Morris does so effectively so often. I think there's a way to get all these guys into the same team. I think you can get Jordan Morris and Rusnak and Ferreira or whoever you want to stack in that front line. I think you can get all those players together in central spaces in a way that really makes sense. Like, I can picture a world in which Ferreira drops in, collects the pass from maybe from Christian Roldan, breaking lines to him, and he turns and plays Jordan Morrison behind. I can see that play out really easily in my head. It just hasn't played out a lot on the field yet because, number one, the pieces around Ferreira haven't been there in the way that he would have expected, including someone who he's very familiar with, and Paul Arriola, and really Jordan Morris as well in that regard from their national team time. And it just hasn't been a lot of time, period. Ferreira has not been very good so far, but I'm like nowhere even close to skeptical about his fit in this team. I think he's going to be a really, really valuable piece.
Yeah, I agree. I think that more should have been done to integrate him a little bit earlier, but there was some conditioning and some physical things that he struggled with early. And I think that's where there's been a struggle for him to adapt, because like you said, he's a much different striker than Jordan is, where he's looking to get behind the defenders and you can get him into space quicker. And I remember earlier in the preseason, in some of the earlier games, you look at either Pedro de la Vega or Albert Rusnak, where immediately as they got the ball, it was almost a first touch pass behind the defense, and that's where Jordan is jumping to, and that's not Ferreira. Against St. Louis and in this game at home against Houston, once again, we saw Ferreira making a run where Albert didn't find him quick enough, or he wasn't expecting him to go there. And then when he did get the ball, he was getting it with the back to goal. And I honestly think there's a little bit of either a confidence or a lack of rhythm thing where he was just giving you a bad pass, or he wasn't really turning. He was turning into pressure and he would get dispossessed. So I think all those things will get fixed. But I do wish that the team would have done more earlier to just get him adapted and playing to Ferreira's strength rather than just playing their system without knowing that Ferreira is a different type of guy.
Looks like we got some potentially some newsbreakers in chat. We got Reese saying that Sounder at Heart reports we are in advanced talks to sign Ryan Kent, 28 goals, 31 assists in 5 seasons. Isn't that the guy from Ted Lasso? Niko, can you confirm or deny the accuracy that the Sounders are signing the guy from Ted Lasso?
Yeah, man, that's why I haven't slept a drop. I've been working on that all night.
Is that your report?
That is my report. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, Reese is citing Niko's report in our chat. Hell yeah. Thanks, Reese.
So he is a free agent, of course, that was playing at Fenerbahce in Turkey. The last he played back in 2024. He had actually signed a 3-year deal with the Turkish team, but he had a fall off with the coaching staff, and ultimately he gets canned by Mourinho, and he kills the contract. There is a press release by Fenerbahce saying that it was a mutual parting ways of this specific player, and he hasn't been able to get a team since then. He is essentially a left winger. He can play the opposite wing. He has played some striker, but he's primarily a left winger. He is a very creative player, good on the ball, likes to get forward, can beat you off the dribble. I'm not selling you here an amazing player, by the way. I mean, he's obviously a free agent, and therefore I'm not here selling you like this amazing guy, but I think that there are some components about him that are very interesting. His best time came with Rangers, where he's even won the Scottish Premiership under escaped me the coach he was with, but he's an interesting player, man. But all in all, I think it's a low risk, high reward type of solution for the Sounders to bring in a depth piece. We talked about Paul Arriola. I think he's essentially going to get placed in the end of season injury list, and therefore Seattle would get some money back, and that's how they're going to be able to pay for the salary. He's 28. He's interesting, but yeah, that's kind of the mix. In a nutshell, the report.
Joe, have you ever heard of Ryan Kent? And if not, what do you think of Seattle potentially adding a player of the profile that Niko just outlined?
Yeah, Ted Lasso is where my head went first as well. I think, man, I want to use the word ambition so badly, but I feel like I shouldn't. I love to see this kind of move from Seattle, where they clearly have their eyes on keeping this squad as strong as possible and using as many roster mechanisms as they can to stack this squad, right? With Arriola going on the season-ending injury list, my thought had been that Seattle were looking to find somebody, and they very much are, as Niko's talking about here. So I've never seen Ryan Kent play soccer in my entire life. His track record, his resume is not amazing, like you're talking about, Niko. But we've seen dudes with less come in and impact MLS teams before. So he's not going to need to play a huge role if he's not good enough to do so. It isn't impacting games at that level. I love to see more than this specific player. I love to see Seattle going back into the market and getting somebody done before the window closes.
All right, Joe, got one league-wide question and then maybe a USMN tier, and then we'll get you out of here. Know you got content to make yourself. I guess looking at the first few weeks of the MLS season so far, is there a club that comes to mind as maybe an unexpectedly good performer, or someone who is playing at a level that you didn't think they would before the season started? My answer is the Chicago Fire, but if you've got a different one, who's kind of just caught your eye so far through the first 5 match days?
I was pretty warm on Chicago, so I'll go a different direction. I'm going to go to Vancouver and how good they've been. It's brutal, frankly, that their historic start to 2025 was dashed on a weekend where MLS is playing through an international break and they're missing Andres Cubas and Pedro Vite and Ali Ahmed and Brian White, 4 starters from this team because MLS plays through international breaks. Only 7 teams have done what Vancouver did through 4 games of going 4-0-0 in MLS history. Like they were on an historically hot start, and it's absurd to me that was just thrown in the garbage this past weekend, but that's the way it goes. Jesper Sorensen looks legit as far as someone who can set up a tactical structure and communicate his ideas to his players. I am at least on TSS. I get a lot of fun poked at me because I am very much a managers matter way less than we all think they do, and all talk about them as being the main characters, and they're not because they're not on the field. Yeah, there are some managers that I think can have an outsized impact if they're really good at communicating their ideas. Wilfred Nancy is one of them. He's the best coach I think we've ever seen in Major League Soccer. Jesper Sorensen is not Wilfred Nancy, and the Vancouver Whitecaps don't dominate the ball quite like Nancy's crew teams or Montreal teams do or did. But he is so much fun in how he's setting up this team in a 4-3-3, flexible positioning. They're keeping one fullback back. Laborda will tuck into the center backs. They'll pinch, that winger into that they'll leave that winger wide. They'll pinch the other winger into the half spaces. Vancouver don't have a lot of talent, like relative to the best teams in Major League Soccer. And they've been playing legitimately good ball. And it took them being decimated by CCC play, and which they're still in, by the way, and injuries and in an international break that wasn't a break for them to actually lose a game in the regular season. So I'm so impressed by Vancouver, but there've been a lot of teams, to be honest, that have picked up results in this weird early season stretch. San Diego missing now 2 of their 3 most important attackers in Chucky Lozano and Marcus Ingvartsen. And they're on a, just under 2 point per game pace. They lost to Austin over the weekend, but they've just been decimated by injuries and international call-ups as well. They're playing really good ball. There's a lot of teams that are pushing up the table that I didn't expect to be nearly as high as they are through 5 games.
Joe, the U.S. men's national team, God love them. If the Seattle Sounders are down bad right now, the U.S. men's national team are down worse.
Yes,
I covered actually both of these Nations League games, the loss to Panama and then the 3rd place game, why did they have a 3rd place game for Nations League?
I hate it.
I was there people were taking photos of the stands. They're like, there's only 27 people there. What the hell? And it's like, yeah, because it's the 3rd place game for a tournament that no one, I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to ask you, Joe, about your takes on the Pochettino era so far. I was calling him Pocatino on the last episode,
nice.
And then shortening that to Poke, which I guess is not correct, but I'm going to keep calling him Poke because I think that's a good name for him. But I gotta say, I understand he came in with a big name. He's had a big track record of success with some big clubs, obviously. But when I look at it, there's just been a couple things so far where I'm like, I'm not like the one that I keep bringing up, which no one is talking about this, and I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. But fact that he called in the CF Montreal punch guy, I'm like, what is he? What are we doing with that? Like that. And then remember how horrible he looked until he scored that goal. One of the worst performances I think I've ever seen in a USMNT kit. So he calls that guy in. That was weird. And then you have this Nations League performance, which was kind of a joke, honestly. So I'm kind of looking at this guy and I'm like, man, was Berhalter onto something, or does this guy know what he's doing? Like, what is your just take on how the program has looked since he's taken over, and then just that kind of Nations League debacle?
I mean, it hasn't been great. We'll say that much. The Matco call up back in January was truly wild. And I think the decision to leave both Luna and Gio Reyna on the bench against Panama was also bizarre. Like, there have been a lot of very weird things that have happened so far under Pochettino. Poke, that's excellent work in a lot of respects. Really, my overarching take on the U.S. men's national team right now is Pochettino, Berhalter, whoever, since the 2022 World Cup, and there have been other whoever's in there, I suppose. The pool just hasn't progressed. If anything, it kind of seems like they've regressed a little bit, where club situation, or at least the progress we thought was going to be there from players like Yunus Musa, and we hoped would be there for Gio Reyna. We hoped would be there for Serginho Dest and Ricardo Pepi. And I mean, you can run through the list. Almost all those guys have stalled at club level, where Yunus Musa, he's playing some better ball right now with Milan, but is not really in a role that fits him super well with the U.S. and hasn't played very well for them.
Was he playing right back? Sorry,
he played right back against Panama, but mostly the U.S. were dominating the ball in that game, and he played as like a right winger, which is also not a role that he really fits in. But that's another thing that Poch has stuck with so far. It's all been quite strange. But really, I think Pochettino or no, and this goes back to my we overrate the importance of managers conversation. Pochettino can't wave a magic wand and make this pool of players so much better than they are. You know, their floor has always been low enough with this crop to lose to Panama in a really, really tight game where you give up basically no chances. Their floor has always been low enough to lose to this version of Canada, who have real talent and have a real way of playing and clearly wanted that game in a way that it didn't seem like the U.S. did. I'm a little bit worried about some of the mentality stuff. I try not to dig so far into that because it's all a bit hand wavy and ethereal to me. But it seems like this player pool needs a little bit of a rude awakening. And maybe this window was that. But then there is also just the very real sense in which the pool of players is pretty good. It's certainly not great. And their floor is low enough to have a 2-game stretch like the one we just saw.
Joe.
But I mean, real quick, this close to the World Cup, I mean, there's no chance that Pochettino is not the national team head coach in 2026, is there?
No. Mauricio Pochettino will be coaching this team on the sidelines at SoFi Stadium when the U.S. kick off their World Cup campaign next summer. It's been weird. It's been bad. It's been a very weird, bad last year and change for the U.S. with the Copa America stuff. Now the Nations League stuff. I think there is a positive coming out of this window, and that's that Diego Luna looks like a real asset to the U.S. He was awesome in his start last night, and probably the only player, maybe outside of Tim Weah, who I thought was pretty good in the attack. He was like the only U.S. player that really seemed to seize that opportunity that he was given, and I really enjoyed that. I'm not in despair about the U.S. team right now, but I think that's maybe because I've been lower on this team for a while than a lot of other folks out there. The badge FC stuff just doesn't do anything for me. But a rebound is needed. And this U.S. team needs to show a bit more. Honestly, they need to play better soccer. It's as simple as that if they want to give themselves a run or a chance to make a run in 2026. So it's going to be interesting to see, fellas.
I thought it was funny that the one goal that they were able to score was the 2 MLS guys, Diego Luna and Patrick Othman. Like that kind of just tied a bow on the whole thing. Joe, we're going to get you out of here on that. Thank you so much for the time, man. We're going to have to do this again soon. Love getting to check in with you about both Seattle and the league from a national perspective. So, we'll get you back on here, but thank you for the time here this morning. Everyone, go sub to Backheeled, listen to Total Soccer Show, and thanks for the time, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, guys, thank you. My real quick, dropping a prediction before I leave. This was fun, by the way. I really enjoyed it. Would love to be back. I'm predicting at least 4 points, maybe even 5 for the next 3 games that Seattle have, all on the road. I think they're going to start to pick up points at a better clip. Honestly, I'd be a bit surprised if that doesn't happen. I know that's not a sizzler, but that's what I'm leaving on.
Hey, that's actually it's not bad. Not bad at all. I think it might be a little bit of a sizzler if you ask the Sounder audience.
Our chat's definitely not feeling that prediction. But,
all right, fellas, this was fun. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Joe. That was Joe Lowery, Backheeled, a Sounder at Heart partner, and Total Soccer Show. And we had some breaking news on the show this morning, reported by Niko. Roy Kent is the guy from Ted Lasso, but close enough. So Seattle Sounder, Niko, how much smoke would you say there is to the Ryan Kent stuff? Is that like, would you say that that's likely to happen, or is it more of just like a kind of rumor at this point?
No, it's likely to happen. That's why I kind of waited on as long as I did, and I spent all night just going over videos and almost 90 minutes of certain games that I could find just to get a better take on who he was as a player. But yeah, man, they've been looking around the league. They've been looking outside of the league. And for what I can tell, the Sounders are clearly trying to add depth without having to give up anything. Obviously, if and I'm going to go ahead and say here, they were looking at guys like Julian Gressel. They were looking at guys like Robert Taylor, and therefore those players that are under contract with an MLS team, they're not going to give them up just for free necessarily, and therefore you need to give something up. Seattle at this moment in time don't have a lot of trading chips, aside from a lot of the young guys that maybe won't be as valuable in that sort of move. There was a possibility of maybe doing a cash purchase for specific players, but at the end of the day, this was the low risk, high reward type of situation that the team was kind of looking for. He's a free agent. He has a lot of potential. He's experienced. He has a certain trajectory. He's a former Liverpool academy guy. He's some
Brad
point.
Smith. This is Brad Smith 2.0. Like,
it's a typical Sounder profile player. As soon as it hit my radar, I was like, man, that has Sean Henderson written all over it. He's a brilliant guy that's always keeping tabs on guys that have this sort of profile, and plus knowing that he had certain issues with his contract and was looking for a team. He's going to be looking for that second chance. I've been someone that at times hasn't believed in this sort of players, and they always come to play for Seattle. I mean, like Gustav Svensson was a guy that when he first came in, I was like, I don't really know. He's a little bit older, and is the profile really there? And then, he came and worked, right? This is the typical Sounder signing where they're giving a guy a second chance. He's got a lot of potential. And again, this fits the team well because they have all of the ability to manage it any way they want it. The way I put it on the story was that it was potentially going to be a through December contract with an option for next year. Any other player that they would have gotten through MLS, they would have to honor that contract, right? So if you were going to pick up a guy that had a 2-year contract, maybe this year with a lower salary, but next year you'll be on the hook for 1.6 or 900,000. So this specific move gives Seattle all of the ability to just manage it any way they want.
Can this guy play wingback, or is he going to be more of a pure winger?
I think he's a pure winger. I went back and looked at it, and again, very limited to what I've been able to watch between highlights and YouTube and certain games. Like I said, I spend all night kind of looking at him. He looks more like a full-on winger than anything else.
That's why you're the GOAT, Niko, because you pull all-nighters to learn about guys named Ryan Kent. Derek Richards, $4 super sticker, says that's for the breaking news. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. We get breaking news on this show kind of a lot. That's just another reason to tune in. All right, well, that's going to be. It sounds like that this is probably happening, and that it's functionally the Paul Arriola replacement. Like, they don't make this move if the Paul Arriola injury doesn't happen. But it's just reading.
And I want everybody to have an open mind. Like, I could already see my mentions all over. That's not what I was looking for. Really, is that what we're going at?
This isn't ambitious enough.
Yeah, exactly. So people are going to kill this right off the bat. But let me say that if you look at him away from the fact that he's a free agent and he obviously made a mistake or had an issue with Fenerbahce in Turkey. The Turkish league is a very odd league, and many players at times have issues with their contracts and their salaries. This was specifically, apparently, what I've been able to read was that he just had a fallout with the team, and he had a potential move to Lazio that kind of fell off, and that was kind of part of like the start of issues with him with the club. So it wasn't really related to his skill set or anything like that. It was more based on issues with the club per se. So if he can come here and provide half of the creativity that I saw over the last 2 hours, I think he's going to be a player that can be dangerous, that can provide another dangerous player on the wing. And look, anytime you get an experienced guy that has had as much of a track record as he has, it's always valuable, man. So keep an open mind. And remember, this is a very safe, low risk sort of investment. So take it for what it is. It's a debt piece. I like the move.
Attitude problems, I think that's kind of sick. You got Ferreira, who have been talking about his attitude. Now you got this guy who had a falling out with Jose Mourinho, which not the first player to have that happen. But in all seriousness, just rapid reaction. My initial take on this is I like the premise because I've had a take for years that is a kind of unpopular take that the Brad Smith trade was the start of some of this team's downfall on offense, which I say it somewhat facetiously, but they really haven't. There hasn't been like high enough level creativity from out wide. You could argue really since the Jovan Jones, Brad Smith days, there hasn't been like enough of a presence like this. De La Vega was supposed to be the one providing it. That obviously hasn't panned out. Paul Areola was supposed to be someone who would help with that. And obviously he got injured, which is what led to this signing. But this guy essentially strikes me as Brad Smith, which I've been saying that they should. I was advocating for literally Brad Smith. But this is basically the same thing. So
I like the comparison. And, he's a guy that has a quality services into the box, just like Brad did. You could tell the quality of the foot. I mean, immediately as soon as you saw Brad Smith on the training field, you knew that he just had a different type of pedigree. I expect something similar from Ryan Kent. So great their comparison. I really do think that he's going to provide a lot of those Brad type situations when it comes to his services. But I feel like he looks more creative. He looks way more poised on the ball. I love his half turns. I love the way he put his shoulder in. I mean, like I said, maybe it was the time, 2:00 in the morning, and the type of YouTube videos that I was watching, but I like the profile of the player.
We got a couple Ryan Kent takes in chat. Let's get to these. Reese says, to be fair, Ryan Kent was crashing out because he was sent to train on his own and was in talks to take Fenerbahce. How do you say this? The club? Fenerbahce to the court of arbitrations for his treatment. He stands on business. Hell yeah. That's what I like to see. And then Joey says, just watch Kent's highlight montage and he looks like the best player in the world. So there you go. I'm going to have to, just learned about this report while we were laying down this show. So I'm going to have to go dive into the YouTube after this, but I'm excited to watch it. Michael asks, I'll toss this to you, Niko. How long do you think it would take to really integrate him? Did he play in similar systems?
He did play in similar systems. That's why I think he's going to be on the wing. I would expect a 4-2-3-1 formation. I wasn't able to get any information on what form he's in because he hasn't played all year long. So how quickly do you get him in shape? That's going to be something to look at. I don't have any information on what type of conditioning he's currently in, but that's probably going to be the biggest question mark in terms of his talent and how quickly he can hit the floor running because of his experience. I expect it to be very quickly, but MLS tends to be a very physical, very demanding league. So that's where I want to see where he's at because I have no idea.
When do we expect the team to sign him? Is this like an imminent in the next couple days type of thing? Is it going to take a week or two? Any idea on the timeline?
No, it's definitely advanced talks. Definitely sounds like negotiations have passed the point of getting through the biggest obstacles. So I'm positive that within the week or so, you would probably be able to sign the player. You got to bring him on. There's got to be a visa and work permits that needs to be put together. But yeah, I would think that hopefully within the week, the player gets fully signed.
All right. Within the week, the Seattle Sounders might have a new player. That is not necessarily something I was expecting to be a development when we started this show, but here we go. Thanks for giving us the breaking news, Niko. I just had one more topic written down here as we approach an hour here on this episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. Niko, I wanted to talk to you about your interview with Nico Lodeiro. You talked to him after this game against Houston. It was the return of Niko, the Nico Lodeiro Revenge Game, and I thought the ceremony was great. They honored him in the right way. They put all the trophies that he won with this club out on the stage, on the podium that he was on, and just looking at that trophy hall, I was like, God, that is such an alpha trophy hall. Like, you got the literal Champions League one in the middle, you got the 2 MLS Cups, you've got 4 conference championships. So I thought that was just like a beautiful visual representation of his legacy. He seemed very emotional and appreciative of the fan reception that he got. And really, I thought what was partially what was disappointing about how the game went for Seattle was that attendance was actually pretty good, relative to what it's been in a couple of the games this year. There was over 30K there. The crowd was buzzing, and then you get the scoreless draw. But I did like how they honored Niko. But you talked to him after the game, and you asked him a little bit about the report that you had earlier this year about how he actually was aiming to return to Seattle. Apparently, he said, I'll take the vet minimum. Like, the salary is not a concern. I just want to go home and play for the club that I love, go back to the city I love, type of thing. And apparently the Sounders said no. And he seemed, I guess let's start with that. You talked to him about it after the game, and he seemed, I would say, like, it's fair to say he seemed hurt by that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think he seemed hurt. I thought that he was cordial and he was respectful towards Brian Smetzer. But if you go back and you look at the answer that Brian gave about their interaction, and you go back and look at what Niko said about the interaction, is exactly the same, because it's so limited. Is we looked at each other, he said, "You deserve this," I said, "Thank you," and that was it, right? Clearly not what you would expect from a coach-player duo that won 4 Western Conference championships, like you said, 2 MLS Cups, and 1 CCL. Beyond that, he opened up about how things played out. And I thought it was interesting that he said, as soon as Orlando told me that they were going to buy me out, essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, the first thing I did was call Brian, because I wanted to come home. I wanted to retire. They were going to have no salary responsibilities. So I wanted to come home. And he said they must have their reasonings, and I respect it, but they said no. And he actually said, I'm kind of glad that we're talking about this, because I want people to know how things played out, and that I tried to come home and it didn't happen. Another thing that I thought was interesting was that he mentioned that he talked to Adrian at one point, he talked to Craig at one point, talked to Brian. So it was multiple layers of that front office and, coach that he approached the team to. And now he's happy. He says, you know what, it's time to move on. He mentioned the fact that he is happy in Houston. He actually really likes the team, the teammates, the fan base apparently is very warm. So he enjoys it. He does miss Seattle. He did not lie about that. Off the record, we asked him what he missed most about Seattle. He just said the cold, man, the rain. I'm not about that hot life. And he's been in hot climate teams in Orlando and Houston, so he definitely misses the city. He was absolutely taken back by the whole ceremony. He said he teared up. He saw his teammates, his former teammates, Seattle Sounders teammates, tear up. So that was pretty interesting. So yeah, man. In a nutshell, I did ask him if he was hurt by the whole situation, and I asked him, is it a natural feeling to just feel hurt? And he said, yeah, I was disappointed, I was hurt, and I'm not going to hide my feelings about it. So definitely something that tarnished the relationship. People were asking if he would ever be back for a 1-day contract. I don't think so. I think after this whole thing went about, he was touched by the photograph, by the signatures and things that were put on there, by the celebration. But after that, I think it's over and done with.
Why do you think Seattle did say no? And should they have signed him?
Yes. So I'm not sure what they said no. I really don't. I think that anytime that you're getting a player like Nico Lodeiro on a free, with no salary responsibilities, you take them. I think they should have. As much as Kim Ki-hee is a player that you probably needed in terms of depth of that center back position. But let me rephrase that you could use at the center back position. I feel like you would have gotten more out of a guy like Nico Lodeiro. I mean, when you look at the injuries that the Sounders have now, what better player to have than a guy like Nico Lodeiro? Who better to mentor and lead a guy like Pedro de la Vega? What better player to either fill in for Ferreira at that camp position while Jordan Morris is nurturing an injury? A guy like Niko would have been fantastic. He knows the system. He loves the city. He's going to play for you all the time. He could also play holding mid the same way he did for Oscar Pereira, the way he's kind of playing for the Houston Dynamo. He might have lost a couple of steps, but he's a guy that could still make something happen. He's been good for Houston. He was good for Orlando City. I think that he had the stats. He had double digits assist last season. So I absolutely think that they should have signed him, and it would have taken nothing away from this team. It would have just added on, because anything that happened, the Ferreira move, the Arriola move, everything could have happened just adding a guy like Niko. And to me, that was a huge miss.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I'm just speculating, but I think that the way they must have been thinking of it was just like sometimes you need to turn the page, But like you said, they re-signed Kim Ki. This is a club that has a long track record of bringing guys back like this, and I guess it brings to mind. It seemed like there were similar not great feelings around when Rui Diaz left the club. Do you think this is like a recurring theme or something that the club needs to take a look at, of like not having, it seems like, falling outs with some of their greatest ever players like this? Because this is two examples of it.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. And I think that there have been other situations that have not been as dramatic and as in your face sort of situation. The Ozzy thing, he left upset. He obviously was the right move at the time by Garth Lagerwey. But then that kind of slowly faded out and he was able to come back. But I don't think that there was as much friction with the player. He obviously had the negotiations with Garth, but as far as we know, him and Brian were fine and there was no issues. I think that when it comes to Niko and Raul, there were questionable relationships at the end of their tenure with the coaching staff, or specifically with Brian, and then obviously with the front office at some point. So it is something that I think that they should look at. It is something that is hard to manage, because every player is gonna want more and is gonna want to stay, and you got to know when to turn the page. But the way you do that, the demeanor, the way you approach it, I feel like that's where the tactfulness of the club needs to be taken a look at.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that the ceremony they did it up for him, and I thought that aspect of it was a good way to honor him. But I don't know. I think people are right to be kind of side-eyed at how there seems to be these falling outs with club legends. You should try and avoid that if at all possible. I mean, these are two of the two main guys that delivered a ton of winning and trophies and great times and great memories to the city. So I definitely think it's you never want to see either Niko or Raul kind of feeling the way that they feel on their way out. Niko feeling rebuffed like that. It's definitely.
And if you look at both of their last seasons, they were both like almost catastrophic. I mean, do you remember that picture of Raul just on the ground of the training facility, just kind of sitting there? He was suspended throughout that, or not suspended. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that because I cannot say suspended. But he was kept from a game and had to train individually.
Like they suspended him, but then said it wasn't a suspension. Is that what happened?
Yes, exactly. It was an internal matter. So all of that situation was just rough. And bringing him in 3 minutes into the game, I'm talking about Raul at the time, and the Niko, that was something that he came out and said it halfway through the season that he wasn't going to come back because he didn't feel like the team wanted to re-sign him back. So both of those situations were just kind of toxic, and it's odd that a team like Seattle, that in the past has been labeled as a very pro player, and we're bringing everybody back, and we've brought back Gonzalo, and we've brought back Freddie Montero, and all of these players. It seems like that's changed over the years.
James, thank you for the $2 super chat. Appreciate you, man. Craig didn't want Niko exposing Rusnak's low effort. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. It is like when I think about Niko's legacy on this team, it is just I think he's the best like two-way number 10 I've seen play in MLS in terms of like his work rate, and just that guy was a freak. Never stopped running. He never stopped running.
Niko is the epitome of just hard work and dedication. Niko, at his age, the way he nurtures his body, the way that he brings in people from Uruguay to do all kinds of work on him and make sure that he's flexible, that he's durable. I mean, look at his injury track record. I mean, for all the time that he was here, sure, he had a couple of injuries, but he wasn't someone that you would be like, man, is he going to be there? You knew he was going to be there. You knew he was going to be the guy that covered the most amount of area of the field. You know that he was going to be in every shot. And look, if you look at every single big moment that Seattle had, he was always there, whether it was with an assist to Victor Rodriguez in 2019, whether it was 2 goals away in Puma Stadium to get that series from what it was a 2-0 deficit to a 2-2 and bring home a 2-2 draw was huge. And then he scored here at home and so on and so forth. The 2019 Western Conference final at LAFC, he was huge there. Niko was always a big-time player. And I think he's still a big-time player. If I'm looking for somebody to come out and know what to do on a high-stakes situation, even at his age, I can count on Nico Lodeiro.
He had a good year for Orlando last year. I'll say that. Like, if you watch him play, I don't think he's, the full Nico Lodeiro of old, but he's a guy that still – you could put him in an MLS at any age, and he's probably going to get you 10 to 12 assists. So there is that. I mean, we'll see how it pans out with Houston this year.
Yeah, he didn't have a big gimmick in Seattle. I think a lot of it had to do with the pressure of coming back, the ceremony. I mean, he did not have his best game. He still tried to get you with like a bicycle kick or a half volley.
Bicycle kick, and he did the classic. Oh man, when he tried to draw the foul right outside the box, I was like, oh man, I would know that move anywhere. That is Absolutely great to see. All right, Niko, real quick, we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes, but let's talk about this upcoming game. Seattle Sounders got San Jose Earthquakes next on deck, Matchday 6 at PayPal Park. And I think there's a lot riding on this game vibe-wise. Maybe, you're still at the point, it's March, if they lose, the season's not over, but they just really need like a vibe boost, a morale boost. Even like if they tie this game but score 2 or 3 goals, I would be like, all right. I mean, it's not great to drop more points or whatever, but I think like the most important thing for how I see it is just like a good cohesive performance in the attack where you actually like, it can't be decent chance generation, but you don't finish like it was against Houston. You're going against a San Jose team that they're not as bad, it doesn't seem like, as they were last year. And last year they wooden spooned and gave up 80 goals, and Seattle couldn't beat them. That was one of the the frustrating things about last year, was that the Quakes beat them once and then drew them once, which a lot of people were rightfully tilted about. But anyway, that's kind of how I see the expectations for this game. Like it's a situation where I value performance over result. Like if they get a 1-0 win, but it looks terrible, like I don't know how much that does for it. Would help the vibes, but it definitely wouldn't completely salvage them. How do you size up this matchup against the Quakes?
I think every single one of those road games is big for Seattle, and they have to try to get out of the rut they're in, and there needs to be a boost of confidence within the group. I'm afraid that if they have a bad performance, this thing's just going to snowball. I mean, it all started with the 2-2 draw at home against Charlotte, the own goal at RSL, getting bounced off at a CCC. I mean, it just seems like he's been gut punch through gut punch through gut punch. Seattle needs to be able to hit back and have a good performance and get a win. Again, we've been here, we've been there, done that. So am I saying that the season's over? Absolutely not. But it just doesn't vote well for the team. And being a Sounders team that I felt like last season, by getting to the Western Conference Finals, regained a little bit of that elite level type of reflectors and something that they've been lacking. I thought they were going to build on that. But now, with some of these performances and lack of results, it seems like you're reverting back to last season, and that's just frustrating in so many ways. So San Jose is a good team, and just like RSL, San Jose is always going to be a tough game for Seattle. I mean, it's just the way it is. I feel like this San Jose team, as much as they are very good offensively, they are very poor defensively. So Seattle has to be able to score a couple on them. And they got scored on 4 times by Charlotte, but it could have been 6, and it could have been 7, to be quite frankly. Now, San Jose did have their chances, and I don't know what happened with Chicho Arango, but he usually doesn't miss the sitters he missed in this game. He had at least 4 chances that I saw that he usually puts away and didn't. So hopefully Seattle doesn't get the back end of that, where maybe he was a little bit off this week and he's going to be on next week. But this is a quality squad regardless of. They're a dangerous team offensively. But Seattle needs to be able to control tempo. They got to be able to expose that back line. They got to be able to take it to the San Jose team in a more direct way. Because, look, Vargas had a baller of a game against this team, and they were able to just expose the flanks all game long. They're playing with Christian Espinosa as a wingback, so you got to be able to take it to him, make him defend, make him run. So, all in all, Seattle needs this result big time. But Bruce Arena in San Jose, that's a recipe for disaster in so many ways. Bruce is not going to want to just go down against this Seattle team. I think he's going to make it difficult, especially after he just got the 4-1 beatdown in Charlotte.
They got to score a goal. Maybe even 2 goals. Maybe. I'm just saying. And if they don't, if they get shut out in this game, people are going to be saying that it's looking like the same thing as last year. And again, they'll be right. They'll be right. So I think there is a lot of pressure on this game. Like this could go one of 2 ways. Like they could either get a result and a win and a performance that's kind of galvanizing, and you're like, all right, maybe this actually is okay, and it's not going to go off the rails. But that that Houston performance didn't leave a ton of optimism, but the good news is they have a chance to do exactly that in this game. Let's hit one more question here, Niko, and then we'll get out of here. Jake asks, are we burning an international slot on Roy Kent? And Roy Kent, that's the Ted Lasso guy, right?
Yeah, that is
right. Burning an international slot on Ryan Kent. And do we have anyone in the pipeline to come off? Georgie, Key here, Pedro. If no, do we buy one to be used for our potential U22 signing?
So yes, today international slot. He's definitely going to occupy one. What's the other question? Do we have
Anyone in the pipeline like Georgie, Kihi, or
Uh,
Pedro?
I don't think at this time, other than Schneider, more of like a central midfielder sort of situation there. And when it comes to the U22, that's going to be safe for the summer. And to the best of my knowledge and a little bit of my hope, it is going to be a striker. It's going to be a striker U22. So that's going to be interesting to take a look at. That's why I didn't expect them to kind of rush that specific move just yet. I think they're going to do their homework. They're going to wait for the summer where there's more players available, and then you'll get your big time U22 signing.
All right. We're going to call it right there. Thank you so much, as always, to everyone for tuning in to another great episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. Thank you to Joe Lowery for joining the show. That was awesome to get the national perspective on Seattle, MLS, and the U.S. men's national fraud squad. And Niko, great job, man. Breaking news on the show. You didn't even tell me before we got on that you had this report. I didn't see it. I'm about to go watch some Ryan Kent's footage right now, dive into that YouTube, and gonna lay down a draw pod with Noah. Gonna be back streaming for Under the Lights on Thursday. The content doesn't stop, folks.
That's right. Hey, and if I was a little bit off, a little bit slow today, please forgive me. Like I said, I got zero sleep.
All nighter.
Yeah, and I haven't had one of those in a long time. At this age, is a little bit more difficult than it used to be. But definitely check it out. Check out the pieces Sounder are hard. Make sure that we get our sponsors, Noah. Make sure that you support our sponsors the same way you support our show and support Sounder are hard as well.
All right.
Video, share it, all of the above.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the video, sub to the channel. I forgot to show. Good reminder. Like the video, sub to the channel. Follow us on Instagram. That's one that we're pushing right now. All right, we're getting out of here on that. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
The Seattle Sounders brand new 2025 kit is here. Inspired by two traditional Southern Coast Salish weaving techniques, twilling and twinning. These techniques, passed down through generations, honor the resilience, deep-rooted ties, and creativity that define the cultural fabric of this region. The striking deep blue jersey will be worn by the Sounders for the next 2 seasons to honor the club's deep connection with the Puget Sound and shared responsibility as stewards of the greater Salish Sea watershed. Backing up that commitment, the Seattle Sounders will donate up to $50,000 to benefit community charities around the Puget Sound region. To get your very own Salish Sea kit, visit lobbingscorchers.com/kit. That's lobbingscorchers.com/KIT. The Seattle Sounders brand new 2025 kit is here. Inspired by two traditional Southern Coast Salish weaving techniques, twilling and twinning. These techniques, passed down through generations, honor the resilience, deep-rooted ties, and creativity that define the cultural fabric of this region. The striking deep blue jersey will be worn by the Sounders for the next 2 seasons to honor the club's deep connection with the Puget Sound and shared responsibility as stewards of the greater Salish Sea watershed. Backing up that commitment, the Seattle Sounders will donate up to $50,000 to benefit community charities around the Puget Sound region. To get your very own Salish Sea kit, visit lobbingscorchers.com/kit. That's lobbingscorchers.com/KIT.